the bright lights of the International Education Summit had never seemed more blinding. Lily Whitmore stood backstage, her heart pounding as she prepared to speak before an audience of hundreds. For years, she had been the subject of whispers, a symbol of betrayal and pain. But today, she was finally ready to speak her truth. Her story wasn't just about overcoming obstacles or reclaiming her legacy, it was about something much deeper: the power of self-forgiveness, the courage to stand in the light after years of hiding in the shadows, and the choice to let go of the past, not to forget it, but to allow it no longer to define her. Today, the stage was not merely a platform to share her accomplishments. It was her battleground, and Lily had one final truth to deliver, the truth that would shatter the expectations of her family, her past, and the world that had been watching her rise. As she stepped into the spotlight, she knew her life was about to change forever. But what would the audience see when she revealed the final pieces of her puzzle? The hall was filled with warm lights, golden balloons hovering near the ceiling, and a long table stacked with silver trays of hors d'oeuvres and sliced cake topped with lilac frosting. Laughter echoed across the polished tiles as relatives clinked glasses and exchanged compliments. A live string quartet played softly in the corner, filling the luxurious suburban home with a melody as polished as the crystal chandeliers above. It was Hannah's 17th birthday. Everyone was here. Uncles, aunts, distant cousins, friends of the family, even Mr. Bexley, the old family lawyer, had dropped in for a toast. Everyone, of course, except Lily. Lily sat alone in the corner of the room near the fireplace, dressed in a modest blue dress that looked plain next to Hannah's glittering gown. She had brushed her hair straight, tucked her hands into her lap, and tried to keep a smile on her face, though it cracked now and then when her name wasn't called for a photo, or when another relative passed by without acknowledging her. She wasn't invisible. She was deliberately being overlooked. That hurt more. "Lily," came a sharp voice behind her. It was Aunt Meredith, her father's elder sister. "Could you make yourself useful and go get more napkins? They're out in the garage." Lily stood, nodded without a word, and slipped out of the room. She didn't mind doing errands. She had grown used to it. It gave her something to do besides pretending not to notice that Hannah got a necklace, a new phone, and a car key today, all without even a nod to the girl who shared her room and used to tie her shoelaces when she was 5. But when Lily returned with the napkins, something had changed. The room had quieted. Conversations paused mid-sentence. All eyes seemed to converge on a single figure standing near the cake, her cousin Gavin. A lanky boy with quick fingers and a talent for causing chaos. He was holding something in the air, Lily's old notebook, the one she used to scribble poems and lists in. "She wrote this," he said loudly, flipping open a page. "Listen to this. Some days I wish I had never been taken in. It's like living in someone else's shadow. A charity case they're tired of feeding." That's her handwriting. There was a stunned silence. Then gasps. Some eyes widened in disbelief. Others narrowed. "That's not what I meant," Lily said, stepping forward, face flushed. "It was a private." "So you admit you wrote it?" Hannah asked, her voice dripping with disdain. "You think we ruined your life?" "No. She started to explain, but the words tangled in her throat. Her mother, no, the woman she called mother, stepped forward, face pale with quiet rage. "Lily, after everything we've done for you? After raising you, feeding you, sending you to school, this is what you write about us?" It was a moment of sadness, Lily pleaded. "I didn't mean it like that, I was venting." But the guests had already begun whispering among themselves. Judging. Condemning. Then came the voice that broke something inside her. Her father. Cold and booming. "She's always been ungrateful." Lily turned toward him, shocked. "Dad?" He cut her off with a glare. "Don't you call me that." The room fell into a heavy silence. "I've had enough," he continued. You come into this house, eat our food, live under our roof, and this is the thanks we get? It's not true, she tried, but Hannah cut in. She even told her friend at school that Mom nearly went bankrupt because of her medical bills. That's what she said. She told everyone she's the reason we're poor. I didn't. Lily cried out, but her voice sounded smaller than she expected. Weaker. Her mother stepped forward again, trembling now, not with fear, but fury. Is that why you sneak around? Write these little entries? Play the victim? I never. A slap rang out, sharp as thunder. Lily's cheek burned. She staggered backward, stunned, the taste of copper blooming in her mouth. It hadn't been her mother. It had been him. Her father. He didn't even look remorseful. For a long moment, she stared at him, eyes wide with disbelief. Her vision blurred at the edges. The string quartet had stopped playing. Somewhere a wine glass clinked as someone set it down too hard. Then came the final blow. You want to be on your own, her father said, voice cold as steel. Fine. Get out. Now. But it's raining, someone whispered. She needs to learn what the real world is like, he replied, not even looking at her. Lily's eyes met her mother's. There was no compassion there. Only exhaustion. Resentment. Perhaps even a strange relief. I have nowhere to go, she said in a whisper. Not our problem anymore, Hannah said, arms crossed. And with that, Lily turned. She didn't cry. Not then. Her body moved on its own, numb, mechanical. She walked past the shocked guests, past the tray of half-eaten canapés, the photos of family vacations lining the hallway walls, the welcome mat she had once stepped on the day she first arrived. She opened the door. Rain splashed down in sheets, drenching the marble steps. Behind her, no one called her name. The stone embraced her like a cruel joke. Cold needles of water pierced her dress, stuck to her hair and skin. She had no coat. No phone. No money. Just a soaked notebook in her trembling hands and the echo of betrayal ringing in her ears. She walked blindly at first, unsure where her legs were taking her. Street lights flickered. Cars passed, indifferent. The night was thick with fog and headlights. She found herself beneath a bridge near the outskirts of the neighborhood, where the parties didn't echo, and the street lamps didn't shine. Lily sat there on the cold concrete, pulled her knees to her chest, and finally allowed herself to cry. Not just for the slap. Not just for the accusations. But for the years. All the birthdays where she smiled as Hannah blew out the candles. All the hours she spent folding laundry, cleaning up after dinners, helping her mother with groceries. All the time she told herself, this is my family. This is home. She was wrong. The apartment was hardly more than a storage room, repurposed out of desperation. It was deep in the basement of a crumbling tenement on the city's east side, where the alleyways smelled of mildew and old oil, and where sirens became lullabies. The walls were cracked, the floor uneven, and every few minutes, a train passing somewhere above shook the ceiling tiles with a low, grumbling protest. It was all Lily could afford. The space was barely big enough for the stained mattress pushed against the corner, a tiny metal table with two mismatched chairs, and a sink that spat rusty water when it worked at all. The air was damp, heavy. Mold crawled up the corner walls like dark veins, and in winter, her breath fogged in front of her. But it was hers. After the night her family cast her into the rain, Lily wandered for nearly 3 days, sleeping in bus stops, sneaking into laundromats for warmth, and drinking tap water from gas station bathrooms. On the 4th day, half-conscious and feverish, she stumbled into a shelter run by an old woman named Margot, who didn't ask questions but offered her a cup of broth and a place to rest. It was Margot who helped her find this room. It ain't much, she had said, unlocking the basement door, but no one will kick you out here. Rent was cheap, paid weekly in cash to a tired landlord who rarely spoke. Lily found work at a 24-hour diner 6 blocks away, bussing tables and refilling coffee for truckers and insomniacs. The pay was minimal, the tips unpredictable, and the uniform always smelled faintly of bacon grease and bleach. She worked night shifts and doubled up on weekends. Between shifts, she cleaned at an old bookstore, stocking dusty shelves and mopping sticky floors while classical music played faintly over the speakers. It wasn't long before the fatigue began to hollow her out. She would come home near dawn, drop her keys, and collapse on the mattress without removing her shoes. Sometimes she forgot to eat. Sometimes she remembered to cry, but not always. Her body began to betray her, shaking hands, eyes that burned when she blinked, joints that ached like she was twice her age. Twice, she fainted at work, waking up with concerned coworkers offering her water and questions she couldn't answer. "I'm fine," she always said. "Just tired." But she wasn't fine. She was surviving. Barely. One night, it became too much. It was just past 3 a.m. The diner was nearly empty. A man had yelled at her because his coffee was cold, though she had just brewed a fresh pot. The manager muttered something about replacing her if she couldn't keep up the pace. Her feet felt like slabs of stone. Her head throbbed like it was full of broken glass. She walked home in the cold, staring at the pavement, her apron still tied around her waist. The streets were quiet. Too quiet. A strange kind of quiet that seeped into her bones. By the time she reached her room, something in her had already given up. She stepped inside, dropped her bag, and stared at the small mirror hung above the sink. The girl staring back was not the same girl who used to braid her sister's hair. Not the girl who wrote poems. Her eyes were sunken. Her lips chapped. Her cheeks hollow. She reached into the drawer and took out the folded note she'd written 2 weeks ago. It was brief. Final. Just a few words scrawled in shaky ink. "I'm sorry. I tried. Please forgive me." She set it beside the sink. Then she opened the small cupboard where she kept a bottle of sleeping pills, prescribed by a clinic weeks ago when her insomnia had become unbearable. She poured some into her hand, stared at them, heart silent and still. There was no one left to call. No one would notice. Maybe that was the worst part of it all, not the pain, not the exhaustion, but the sheer invisibility. She sat down slowly. Tears welled in her eyes, but she wasn't sobbing. Just leaking. That's when her phone buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. A slow, persistent rhythm. Frustrated, she reached for it, ready to silence the damn thing, but paused when she saw the name. Unknown student. She hesitated. She had volunteered once, long ago, back when she still lived at home, to tutor underprivileged students online. Only 1 or 2 had shown up regularly. One of them, a shy girl named Rainy Day 19, rarely spoke, but always logged in. Lily opened the message. "I don't know if you still check this account. I just wanted to say thank you. You probably don't remember me, but you used to tutor me when I was going through a really hard time. I never told you this, but I was thinking of ending my life back then. My parents fought every night. I felt like a ghost. But the way you listened, the way you told me I mattered, it helped. I'm still here because of you." Lily blinked. "I'm graduating this year. I got accepted into a teaching program. I want to help kids like you helped me. I hope wherever you are, you're okay. You made a difference. You saved me." She dropped the pills into the sink. Her hands trembled as the realization sank in. In her darkest moment, a voice from the past, one she had nearly forgotten, had reached through the void and pulled her back. Lily sank to the floor, clutching the phone to her chest. The sobs came then, not quiet or polite, but wild and unfiltered. She cried for everything: the betrayal, the hunger, the loneliness, the hopelessness. But she also cried for that girl, Rainy Day 19. And for herself. For surviving. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. The basement would still be cold. Her shoes would still have holes. Her boss would probably still yell. But she wasn't invisible. She had mattered. Even if only once, even if only to one person, she had mattered. Lily hadn't told anyone she was writing again. After months of emotional and physical exhaustion, followed by that life-saving message from the student she once mentored, something inside her had shifted. Quietly. Slowly. She began pouring herself into words again, not as therapy, not as ambition, but simply to survive. Her small basement room became a refuge of stories. A cracked second-hand laptop and a flickering desk lamp were her tools. What began as scattered diary entries and loose poems slowly turned into something more, a manuscript. A story shaped from pain, healing, betrayal, and hope. It had taken almost a year, written in long nights after work and early mornings before shifts. She called it Ashes of a Dying Star. It wasn't just a novel, it was her. The characters bore the scars of her trauma, yet dared to dream again. The themes mirrored everything she'd lived through: the shame of being unloved, the despair of being forgotten, the miraculous flickers of connection that pulled her back from the edge. When she finished the first draft, she printed it at a library using her last few dollars and hand-bound the pages with string and a plastic cover. She stared at the title page for what felt like an hour, tracing her name in faded ink. By Lily Whitmore. And then, against her better judgment, she made a call. Hannah. After everything. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was the lingering, stubborn hope that the sister she once adored, once protected, could change. She hadn't spoken to Hannah since that infamous night, when Lily was cast out of the family. She'd heard whispers, though. Hannah was still pursuing creative projects, bouncing between internships and influencer gigs, living off their parents' dwindling goodwill. But Lily remembered, once, they had dreamed together. So she called. Hesitantly. Carefully. Lily? Hannah's voice over the phone was surprised, guarded. I just wanted to talk, Lily said. No drama. A long pause. Then, okay. Where? They met at a cafe on the edge of town. Hannah arrived in designer boots and a perfect blowout, sipping a cold brew she hadn't paid for. Her smile was polite but distant. Lily, still wearing her diner uniform beneath her jacket, placed the bound manuscript between them. I just wanted to share it, she said softly. It's a novel I've been working on. Hannah raised a brow. You wrote this? Yes. Hannah flipped through a few pages. Sounds intense. It is. But it's real. I've been through a lot. An awkward silence stretched between them. Hannah finally offered a thin, brittle smile. Well, congrats. Seriously. That's surprising. Lily didn't hear from her again. 2 months passed. She went back to work. She saved up enough for a better mattress. She started writing her second manuscript. Then one afternoon, she walked by a bookstore downtown and froze. There, in the window display, sat a newly released hardcover. Ashes of a Dying Star. Her title. Her story. But under the bold font, the author's name read. Hannah Whitmore. The world fell silent around her. She staggered inside, heart pounding, and picked up the book. She flipped through pages she knew like breath. Her sentences. Her metaphors. Her character arcs. Word for word. Tears welled in her eyes, not from rage, but devastation. She stumbled back out onto the street. Her hands shook as she dialed Hannah's number. Voicemail. Again. Again. No answer. Lily filed a cease and desist with the publisher the next day. She scanned her drafts, her journals, the original printed manuscript, emails containing timestamps from when she first saved it. Margot, the shelter manager, signed an affidavit confirming Lily had read chapters to her last year. The librarian who helped Lily print the draft provided records. The publisher responded within days. They were shocked. They had believed Hannah was the sole author. She had claimed the manuscript had been in development for over a year. She provided only a printed version, no digital drafts. But now that Lily had presented them with detailed documentation and timestamps that predated Hannah's submission, they began to investigate. And what they found was damning. Watermarks from Lily's original document embedded in the manuscript's metadata. Formatting quirks unique to her writing. Even grammar mistakes she had later corrected, but which Hannah had left unchanged. The legal department contacted Hannah for clarification. That's when the betrayal became unbearable. In a desperate attempt to avoid consequences, Hannah flipped the narrative. She claimed that Lily had stolen the manuscript from her. She hacked into my laptop, Hannah told the publisher's legal team. She was jealous. She took my story and altered a few things to make it seem like hers. I trusted her once, but she betrayed me. They forwarded her claim to the court. Suddenly, Lily found herself the defendant in a plagiarism suit. The media got hold of it. Headlines spread. Sisters in scandal, who really wrote Ashes of a Dying Star? Family feud turns legal over hit novel. Whitmore sisters at war over literary theft. The public was divided. Some sided with Hannah, charismatic, social media savvy, already photographed at book launches and on morning shows. Others sympathized with Lily, quiet, unknown, yet clearly prepared with detailed evidence and no history of publication. But the damage was done. Her name was dragged through the mud. Anonymous users called her a leech, an opportunist, a failed sister trying to ride coattails. Hannah, meanwhile, cried on national TV. She was my sister, Hannah sobbed. I only wanted to help her. And she took everything. In court, Lily stood alone. She couldn't afford a high-end legal team. But she had a public defender who believed her. They presented a solid case, timestamps, drafts, emails, even handwritten notes with dates. Character witnesses described Lily's writing habits and emotional breakdowns after the theft. But the most powerful evidence came from an unexpected source. Rainy Day 19. The student she once mentored testified over video. She told us about the book. A year before it was published. She read us pieces. It saved my life. The judge took time to deliberate. Then, in a quiet but clear voice, ruled in Lily's favor. Hannah's contract was voided. The publisher issued a full apology. All royalties were redirected to Lily. Her name was officially listed as the sole author. The book was reissued, with a new author photo and a short foreword from Lily herself. But the victory was bittersweet. Lily had lost something far more intimate than money or fame. She had lost the last thread of hope she held for her family. Not just for her parents, who had cast her out. But for Hannah. The girl she once built pillow forts with. Who cried during storms. Who used to braid her hair and call her brave. Now, all that remained was silence. 1 week later, Lily stood before a crowd at a local bookshop, trembling behind a microphone. She took a deep breath, then spoke. I never imagined I'd stand here today. For years, I wrote because I had no voice. I wrote because I had to. Because silence was killing me. She paused. I hope this book reminds someone out there that their story matters. Even if no one believes you at first. Even if you're invisible. Tell it anyway. One day, someone will listen. The room erupted in applause. But Lily didn't smile. Not yet. Instead, she looked toward the back of the room. Toward the empty space where Hannah should have been. And quietly, beneath the cheers, Lily whispered, "Goodbye." Lily never intended to go public. She never wanted a war, not with her family, not with her past. But truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface, especially when buried under years of lies. The letter came on a Monday. A thick envelope, weathered and yellowed at the edges, bearing the seal of a private law firm in New York. When Lily opened it, her hands trembled. It had been nearly 4 years since her grandmother, Margaret Whitmore, passed away. 4 years, and no one had ever mentioned a will. The family claimed there wasn't one. Her mother had insisted it was all taken care of, and the legacy method business, Margaret's life's work, had naturally passed on to the responsible hands of her daughter and granddaughter, meaning Olivia and Hannah. But the letter in Lily's hand told a very different story. Inside was a notarized copy of a handwritten will. Certified. Legally binding. And addressed, unmistakably, to Lily Whitmore. The will was dated exactly 2 weeks before Margaret's stroke. The script was shaky, but unmistakably hers. Lily recognized it instantly. She had once spent entire summers watching her grandmother write lesson plans and philosophies in that very same hand. Lily sank to the floor, heart pounding, as her eyes moved over the words. "To my dearest Lily. I have watched them dim your flame since you were a child. I see how they treat you, how they twist the truth to suit their own comforts. But you, Lily, you see things in a way none of them ever will. You are my light. My legacy. I hereby leave all ownership, intellectual rights, and controlling interest in the legacy method, including all writings, trademarks, and educational frameworks, to Lily N. Whitmore. Do not let them extinguish your light. Let them rage. Let them lie. But hold your ground. With all the love I never got to say. Grandma Margaret." Attached was a signed statement from the firm confirming the authenticity. A second letter explained a delay, a probate error, followed by a misplaced document due to internal staff turnover. They had only recently rediscovered the sealed instruction. And now, it was in Lily's hands. She read it 5 times before she let herself cry. All those years of being told she was worthless, unworthy, the mistake of the family. All those years watching Hannah bask in spotlight while Lily stood in the shadows, punished for existing differently, for asking too many questions, for not fitting the mold. Margaret had seen her. And now, from beyond the grave, she had given Lily the only thing she'd ever truly wanted, recognition. But this wasn't just sentiment. This changed everything. The legacy method wasn't just some family tradition, it was a multi-million-dollar educational framework adopted by dozens of elite private schools across North America. Its annual retreats alone generated high-profile media attention, corporate sponsorships, and brand deals. It was the lifeblood of the Whitmore family name. And legally, it now belonged to Lily. At first, she considered keeping it quiet. Just using the will to secure ownership, reclaim some rights, rebuild quietly. But it was too late for privacy. After the scandal with the novel, public interest had already peaked. The world was watching. So Lily did what her grandmother told her to do. She let them rage. She posted the will on her blog, an open letter to the public. For years, I was told I didn't belong. I was cast out of my home, accused of stealing my sister's work, and erased from the family history. But the truth has a strange persistence. My grandmother, Margaret Whitmore, entrusted her life's work not to the daughter who controlled her estate, nor the granddaughter who profited off her name, but to me. This isn't about money. This is about legacy. This is about not letting them extinguish the light she saw in me. The post went viral within 24 hours. The media storm was immediate and brutal. Headlines exploded across news feeds. Hidden will reveals true heir to Whitmore empire. Lily Whitmore was right all along, family's legacy stolen for years. Public outcry as hidden testament resurfaces. Talk shows invited legal experts to weigh in. Twitter flooded with hashtags, hashtag justice for Lily, hashtag legacy lies, hashtag let her shine. The family, especially Olivia and Hannah, scrambled for damage control. At first, they claimed the will was fake. Then they said Margaret had been confused when she wrote it. But the lawyers and forensic experts said otherwise. Signatures matched. The timeline held. The law was on Lily's side. The most devastating blow came during a live interview. Lily appeared on Morning America, seated calmly across from a skeptical host. "You're telling us this entire educational empire, currently co-managed by your mother and sister, legally belongs to you?" the host asked. Lily nodded. "Not telling. Proving." She held up the original signed copy of the will. "My grandmother trusted me to carry forward her legacy. They buried that truth for years. But truth is patient. And what do you plan to do with the legacy method now?" Lily looked into the camera. "I plan to restore its soul." Backlash against the Whitmore family was swift and merciless. Former staff came forward with stories of manipulation, rewritten credits, financial coercion. Students who had attended retreats began to question the ethics of the program under Olivia's reign. A former assistant leaked internal emails, proof that the family had known about a missing will but never reported it. Olivia's credibility crumbled. Hannah's public appearances were cancelled. Endorsement deals vanished. Protests erupted at legacy method facilities in 3 states. Alumni demanded change. But Lily didn't gloat. Instead, she released another statement. "I won't fight hatred with hatred. I won't tear it all down just to prove I was right. But the legacy method will be rebuilt, with integrity, with honesty, and with compassion. My grandmother believed in people's capacity to grow. So do I. Even the ones who tried to silence me." 1 month later, she walked into the Legacy Foundation headquarters for the first time in 6 years. The same corridors that once echoed with her footsteps, timid, uninvited, now welcomed her with silence and reverence. She passed portraits of Margaret on the wall. And finally, Lily opened the heavy office door labeled President and Vision Director, Lily Whitmore. She stepped inside. The room smelled like old paper, lemon oil, and justice. The crowd in the grand hall was electric, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. The International Education Summit was one of the most prestigious events of the year. Educators, innovators, and philanthropists from around the world had gathered, eager to hear from the speakers, most notably, Lily Whitmore, the newly crowned head of the legacy method. It was supposed to be a triumphant moment for her. The whispers in the hallways had been nothing but praise. Her name was on everyone's lips. Her book was a bestseller. Her story was one of overcoming adversity, of transforming from a discarded family member to the legitimate heir of one of the most influential educational frameworks in the world. And now, at this moment, she was to take the stage, not just as the keynote speaker, but as a beacon of success, the prodigal daughter returning to claim her birthright. But in the back of Lily's mind, something gnawed at her. The external accolades meant little to her. The spotlight was no longer a symbol of personal achievement, it was the weight of the truth she had to deliver, the truth that had cost her everything. As Lily stood backstage, her palms were clammy, her heart thundering in her chest. This was her moment, but she wasn't sure she was ready for it. It wasn't the speech that worried her, she had memorized it long ago. It wasn't even the pressure to live up to the expectations of the world that had placed her on this pedestal. No, it was the next part of her journey, what would happen after she spoke the words she'd been holding back for years. Her family was in the audience. Her mother, Olivia, sat in the front row, her eyes filled with an expectation that bordered on desperation. Her sister, Hannah, was at her side. They were waiting, hoping for forgiveness, as though their guilt could be washed away by one compassionate gesture from Lily. But Lily wasn't here for forgiveness. As her name was announced, the spotlight hit Lily, blinding her for a second. The applause was deafening. But Lily didn't hear it, not really. She focused on the microphone in front of her, as if it were the only thing in the world. She stepped onto the stage with poise, but underneath her calm exterior, a storm raged. The audience rose to their feet, giving her a standing ovation before she had even begun speaking. The applause was not just for her achievements, it was for her journey, for her story of rising from the ashes of betrayal and heartbreak. Lily took a deep breath, her nerves steadying with the warmth of the room. She smiled politely, but her eyes scanned the audience, her family included. She nodded to the moderator, who introduced her formally. Then, after a beat of silence, she began to speak. I stand before you today as a product of not just success, but also survival. My story is not one of innate brilliance or luck. It is a story of perseverance, of being cast aside when I was just a child, of being silenced by the people who were supposed to love me the most. Her voice was steady, but the weight of her words was unmistakable. There were no theatrics here, no grand gestures to tug at the heartstrings. She simply spoke the truth, as raw as it had ever been. The crowd leaned in, hanging on every word. I am Lily Whitmore, and I was betrayed by the very people who should have been my pillars. But my story is not one of bitterness. It's a story of finding my own strength, my own light, when I was surrounded by darkness. There was a collective intake of breath from the audience. The whispers started, like a ripple through water. Those who had followed her story knew there were deep wounds behind her calm exterior. But hearing her speak about it so openly, so unapologetically, was a revelation. Her eyes flicked to her family in the front row, where Olivia and Hannah sat, visibly uncomfortable. They knew what was coming. Lily continued. For years, I was told I was not enough. That I was a burden. That I was the reason for the downfall of everything I had once held dear. I was labeled a thief, a liar, a failure. And I believed them. I believed I was the problem. Her voice quivered for the first time, but she didn't falter. The pain she had carried for so long was being released in this very moment. She wasn't just telling her story, she was reclaiming it. But when my grandmother passed away, and when I uncovered the truth about the legacy method, I realized that my worth was never about their perception of me. My worth was intrinsic. It was always there, waiting to be acknowledged. The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. Lily's gaze had turned inward as she spoke, but now it returned to the audience, steady and unflinching. Today, I stand before you not just as the heir to a great legacy, but as a woman who finally understands the true meaning of strength. Her voice softened. The audience leaned forward, and Lily paused, gathering herself for the final words that would not just define her, but change everything. But here's the thing, she continued, her eyes locking with her family in the front row. Forgiveness is not about erasing the past. It's not about forgetting the hurt, the betrayal, the lies that have been told. It's about letting go of the hold that pain has on you. And for that reason, I stand here and say to my family, my flesh and blood, that I forgive you. I forgive you for everything. Gasps filled the hall. Everyone expected Lily to lash out, to seek vengeance, to tear into the family who had mistreated her for so long. But instead, she did something no one could have predicted. She forgave them, not because they deserved it, but because she needed it. Her eyes softened as she added, "But let me be clear. Forgiving is not forgetting. And I will never forget the years of being broken, of being made to feel invisible. But I will also never let that darkness define me. I will live, not to seek revenge, but to shine." The silence that followed her words was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was as though the entire world held its breath. The audience stared, speechless, as Lily turned on her heel and began walking off the stage. The spotlight followed her every step. The standing ovation was thunderous, unrestrained. But Lily didn't stay to bask in it. She didn't need to. She had already won the only victory that mattered, her own peace. She left the stage, the applause still ringing in her ears, as she made her way backstage. But her family, Olivia and Hannah, didn't get a moment to breathe. They were still sitting there, frozen, their faces pale, their hearts shattered by the truth Lily had just unleashed. Lily didn't look back as she passed them, but she knew one thing for certain: she was finally free. In the silence that followed, the crowd knew they had witnessed something monumental. This wasn't just the story of a woman reclaiming her legacy, it was the story of a person reclaiming themselves, their worth, and their right to live without the chains of the past. And as Lily disappeared behind the curtains, she could feel the weight of the world lifting off her shoulders. For the first time in her life, she was free to shine. As Lily walked off the stage, the applause reverberating in her ears, she felt the weight of the years she had spent running from her past, the hurt, the betrayal, the brokenness, all slipping away. For the first time in her life, Lily didn't just have the world's approval, she had her own. Her family, sitting in the front row, stared in stunned silence. They were left in the wake of the woman they had cast aside, the woman they had thought they knew, but who had now stepped into a light they couldn't dim. Lily had not only forgiven them, she had found her own redemption. She was no longer the victim of their lies and deceptions. She had taken control of her narrative and, in doing so, had become the author of her own destiny. Her final words echoed in her mind: "I will live, not to seek revenge, but to shine." And as the curtain fell, the applause still ringing in her ears, Lily Whitmore finally understood the power of her own truth. She had chosen to shine. And in doing so, she had found her freedom,